Do you know the 14 traits of successful chiropractors? We've interviewed some of the top chiropractors in the industry and have identified the common traits that they all share. Jump on over to www.chirobusinessmojo.com to get your free report today.
Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Hello. Yes, I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Thanks again for checking in with me today. Well, what a treat my guest is today. Do you have a wealth advocate in your corner, chiropractors? And I'm not talking about your accountant. We all know what accountants do. But do you have someone who's really looking to make sure you aren't overpaying taxes? Who's looking after your credit score? Someone who knows how to negotiate better interest rates? Someone who is plugging the leaks, so to speak, in your financial portfolio? Look, we are very good at being chiropractors, but we aren't so good at maybe the entrepreneurial side of things. And that's what my next guest is here to talk about today. I am so excited to introduce Mr. Garrett Gunderson. Mr. Gunderson has dedicated his career to debunking the many widely accepted myths and fabrications that undermine the prosperity and joy of millions of hardworking, honest business owners. Gunderson's company, Wealth Factory, empowers its members to build sustainable wealth through financial efficiency and organization, leading to clarity, peace of mind, and financial confidence. His company was named to the Inc. 500. He is the co-author of several books, including the New York Times bestseller, Killing Sacred Cows. Garrett has also appeared on CNBC, Fox News, ABC, and is a contributor to Forbes magazine and other publications. Welcome, Mr. Garrett Gunderson.
Hey, good to be with you. So appreciative. It's funny how we connected, and now here we are talking to chiropractors, even though that's not really what connected us. And that's typically how I get connected to people that are helping people in that space. So thanks for having me.
You bet. Just to tell a little of the story, a previous guest, author Craig Ballantyne, fitness guru and more, I guess, he mentioned reaching out to you. And so it's so good to connect with you and have this conversation today. I wanted to start by asking you to fill in any gaps I may have missed or glossed over in your bio.
Well, I think that one thing that bios never really cover is the why, the why we do what we do. And my number one thing is I want to make sure 1 million entrepreneurs achieve financial and economic independence. That means they have enough recurring revenue coming in from investments or from entrepreneurial income that doesn't require their daily oversight or their own personal production to cover their expenses. And when they have that, they can really swing for the fences in what they're up to. So I know that for people that enjoy life, they've got to eliminate financial stress, create more financial confidence, have peace of mind around that, and master their money where most of them are kind of mastered by money. And I feel like I bring an energy to that, a simplicity to that. But more than anything, I don't have them go and scrimp and save and budget and put money in risky ventures. Instead, I get them to focus on investing back into themselves, finding more cash through financial intelligence, meaning that they stop overpaying on taxes, stop overpaying on interest, stop overpaying on investment fees, stop overpaying on insurance, and put that back into something that helps them build stability and a structure that's sustainable from a wealth perspective. And I also believe that they're their greatest asset, and their ability to produce income is what matters most. And if they start prematurely putting money into things they don't know or understand, that could actually be detrimental for their business, the impact they make on their community. And I think that's one of the big reasons why chiropractic is one of those areas that we really emphasize, is because no one said, I want to be rich, I'm going to be a chiropractor. They said, I want to help, I want to be a chiropractor. And I'd rather have them be rich and help rather than go broke trying to help people.
Well, I'm really thrilled about the rest of this interview we're going to go through today because it's so on point for chiropractors. We kind of come out of school and we know how to treat people and take care of people and get them well. But that business hat and everything that goes into it is a completely different discipline, and far too many of us struggle. So I think this is going to be really on point for a lot of our listeners. Let me ask you, what is your experience with chiropractic?
Well, and by the way, it's funny that our company's name is Wealth Factory, and you might hear some noise in the background, because we have this really cool office. It was built in the 1902. It was a hardware building developing tools for the railroad. But every now and again, they still have a little bit of creaks and cracks and that kind of stuff. And if you hear stuff, it's usually just the air conditioner going on in the background. Now, back to your question. When it comes to chiropractic, I met someone by the name of Dr. Patrick Gentempo early on, maybe 2008, introduced to him from basically being in a mastermind with Joe Polish. And when I met him, I sat there and it was a really cool experience because we just hit it off within minutes, philosophically, not just about health, but just about, he started viewing, the things I was saying about wealth and saying that's precisely it. He was deep into philosophy. And so we would kind of geeked out, feeling bad for our wives within moments. I had him on my radio show. He had me on Purpose, his kind of audio program that goes out every month. And the next thing you know, I'm at Total Solutions, and I take my wife, and we're up on the mountain learning about chiropractic, which I knew a little bit about because I'd been going to Dr. Craig Bueller at that time, probably for 8 or 9 years already as my, doctor, my chiropractor. But now all of a sudden we got all this additional depth, and we're having major issues with our son. He'd just gotten kicked out of a Montessori school for not engaging because he had auditory processing issues. And it was awesome that these chiropractors were concerned enough when my wife and I shared our story that one of them flew out just to talk to my son and help select a good chiropractor for him here in Utah. Well, they were they were interested in joining my program too, but they weren't just interested in what I could do for them. They really turned around to create value for us. And then we've had this really cool journey since we watched the documentary Doctored, where we've gone to Francis Murphy, who was featured in that. We've gone to Jason West, who was featured in that. And they've really created a majorly transformative experience for my son, who had everything from heart markers in his blood to, having, really not understanding a lot of things and not developing his language. I mean, it's a pretty in-depth story, but chiropractic really has blessed our lives, and we've become major advocates of it. And, a lot of people probably think I'm a chiropractor. My kids ask me why I'm not a chiropractor because they've had such a positive experience. I'm like, I help chiropractors. Like, but Dad, you should be a chiropractor. Because they don't always like to get on airplanes and have to fly all over, because we've flown to Dallas. We've driven to Pocatello, Idaho. We've gone wherever it was that could really help us out. And man, these doctors are just phenomenal.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story with us. And yeah, it's a message I wish more people would hear, but it sounds like you've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to have some really good chiropractors come into your life. So cool. Let's talk a little bit more about Wealth Factory. What is that?
So Wealth Factory, we do personal finance for business owners. And what we really help them do is get their financial house in order, boost their bottom line so they can keep more of every dollar they make, and help them get a lot more kind of clarity of where they're going so that money becomes a fuel for that rather than an obstacle. I know that a lot of financial firms talk about financial freedom, but in the normal world of accumulation and financial planning and retirement planning, they don't really create financial freedom. They create financial dependency. It's handing your money over, putting it into plans that are locked away till age 59 and a half or maybe longer, with fees that are coming out whether you make money or not, and typically not very comprehensive. We actually look at everything from car insurance, homeowners, liability, disability, medical, life, corporate structure, estate plan, investment fees, taxes, loans, everything, and make sure that it's dialed in and that someone knows where they're set and where they're not set, and importantly, where they have financial blind spots. We illuminate those so they can eliminate them, and then all of a sudden they don't have this, treadmill syndrome where there's a lot of business owners that think the answer is just to run faster. They're on the proverbial treadmill of saying, I'll just make more money. If we can help them keep more of every dollar they make, then all of a sudden they get a lot further, faster, with less risk. And so we build automated infrastructures to help them capture wealth rather than have to scrimp and save and sacrifice and delay. And man, I'm long-winded today. I apologize. You ask a simple question and I just go off for a long time.
Hey, not a problem at all. I want to make sure I'm getting it right. So if I were to join Wealth Factory, is someone working with me one-on-one? Is there a team, or am I just, taking courses and sort of doing it myself?
Well, it depends on your situation. We take 125 people a year in one-on-one. And I wrote a book recently called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And one of the major things the Rockefellers did that gave them an advantage, that they're now passing wealth on to the 6th generation, is that they created this thing called the Rockefeller Family Office. And that Rockefeller Family Office was like an amazing A-team to help them with their finances. And most people don't have that. So we have built a virtual family office, meaning we have attorneys, accountants, investment advisors, cash flow specialists, insurance professionals to meet with and help everyone get everything handled so that we're not just giving education, but there's results and implementation. So they give a second opinion on everything, one-on-one, educate people one-on-one, and then they have a financial quarterback that we call a financial architect that helps them navigate that entire process to save both time and money. But we also have kind of more of a group level program where people come in, they go to 2 sessions a month. One session's from one of our financial architects, the other one's from someone in our network that is kind of these financial nerds that teach them about taxes or credit or whatever area. And then they get a chance to meet with them one-on-one for shorter periods or segments of time. So that's kind of what we do to make sure that there's results and implementation. But normally where we get to know people is, we have a weekly publication. We have a video series to show people how to create economic independence. And we've got a video series on how to buck the banking system and instead kind of build your own way to rig the game in your favor and earn interest rather than pay it. Like, we have all those kind of things built. But as you know, and I know, a lot of people won't get their finances done if it's left to videos. A lot of people have a hard time confronting and facing their finances, primarily because financial people are trying to get their money and take it from them rather than add more money to their life. So I don't blame them. But for me, I always built the one-on-one first, and then we went and have, really acquired a team and spent a lot of time and training so that we could put together beautiful video libraries that are intriguing and interesting. Because that's the thing, finance can be it can be dry and drudgery and painful. So I want to keep it simple and energetic and make sure that people know what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Well, is there a particular size business you like to work with, or will you work with any business?
Well, really on our one-on-one type program, we love to see someone at $500,000 of revenue, not what they take home, but just total gross revenue. And we like to cap that typically at 10 million of revenue, because once they get above 10 million, we can only take about 10 to 12 people on that are above that, because now there's higher levels of complexity. There's additional financial strategies that we can employ. So we limit that. But when it comes to our group coaching program, if someone's doing $100,000 in revenue, they can start that group coaching program that still gives them that one-on-one incentive. If they're below that, then we typically like to do we have a program called Cash Flow Generator that's $1,000 that gets them 3 one-on-one phone calls so that we could just get everything built quickly and get them on the right track. And then when they make more money, then we can always, reach out and upgrade them to a higher level program. But we don't want to get someone into something that, if they're just starting out, we've got easy programs for $1,000 to make sure that they don't make the mistakes and they get organized up front. They don't need the entire, support team necessarily yet. But as soon as they hit that 6-figure mark of revenue, not even what they take home, then we can really bring them into some of the group coaching or the one-on-one coaching.
That's great. That sounds like something right around the area that, at least a beginning or middle chiropractor would be at. So it's a nice way to get their foot in the door and maybe start in the right direction. I read through some of your materials, and I see that you guys are big on identifying bottlenecks. So what do you commonly see in businesses, I would say under $1 million?
Well, under $1 million, the number one bottleneck is the owner themselves, because typically they're the head bottle washer, the garbage person. They solve every problem in the firm. Everything flows through them, and they can just make it happen through sheer will and sacrifice and giving the business everything they have. But at the same time, a lot of times they don't have an outside life. They start to lose their health. They start to get exhausted that way. So a lot of times they just have a hard time with division of labor, or they just delegate tasks. Like, here, will you do this? And then it gets finished, and then the person comes back through them. Here's just one powerful, simple strategy. Delegate a role to someone instead of a task. Give them an objective. Here's what you own. The buck stops with you. Come to me if you want support, but this is what you do. And then let them determine the task to get there, so that they might do it a different way than you do, but as long as they get the result that you're looking for. But part of making that happen is you have to invest more time with the individual up front to train and prepare and have clarity. Like as I'm doing this, I have a meeting later on today where I've got my strengths builder that was handed to me by one of my financial architects, but we also have something called the stewardship shaper. So his name's Wade, and his department he's a financial architect. So first off, we look at what their Kolbe score is. So we know their Konation, Kolbe. It lets me know how he likes to go about getting things done. And it's different than how I do, which is good. Then we ask, what's his stewardship? His stewardship is to keep the people we're working with happy and progressing. His contribution to our mission is that happy members become ambassadors of our brand. We'll want to invite peers to work towards economic independence with them through our company. So, right, that's just the top of this document. But then we have, what are his 5 objectives? He's a quarterback. He's a coach. Member experience. And then, let's see, I'll flip the page here and give you what the other 2 are. And then he just has 4, continuity, making sure that they stay with us. So he has different operations in each one of those to fulfill that. But see, each objective I give him is in his major role, so that now he's focused on his role rather than coming to me and say, hey, I just sent the email off, what next? And people in businesses at $1 million or less tend to hold things too closely and guarded, and they feel like if something is to get done right, it has to be them, right? And part of it is they just don't hire amazing people. And it's worth the extra money to hire someone that's incredible. And in chiropractic, there's this plague of trying to save money by hiring extraordinarily cheap labor. But the problem with cheap labor is it's expensive on a time and energy standpoint on the owner. So once again, simple question, longer answer, but I think that there's some real nuggets in there for people to implement immediately.
There really is. I like what you're essentially saying, at least what I'm hearing, is that you can give someone the framework and then let them work out those detailed steps. And I think that's such a better way of measuring productivity, I guess, than micromanaging every step, which becomes a bigger job in and of itself and maybe not even get the result that you want. I can tell you, having been micromanaged myself and had jobs where I was in sales and they said, hey, here's what you need to meet. We don't care how you do it and how long it takes. I had such a better feeling about my job when I was left to my own devices.
Yeah, and what got me to $1 million in revenue was the thing that kept me from getting to $2 million initially. Because I got to 1 million because of my ability to speak and articulate and some charisma and vision, but it was more vision for one-on-one. And then when I had to say, okay, how am I going to impact more people? How am I going to impact the people we're seeing right now more deeply? I couldn't just be about what I was doing face-to-face with people all the time, so it took writing a book, which was a new skill for me. It took doing podcasts like this. It took putting together videos and hiring coaches so I could be better on videos. I had to learn new skills, and I had to give up certain things that were limiting. And I was actually good at some of those things, but I wasn't unique at those things. One of my early coaches, Dan Sullivan, taught me that. He's like, hey, what are you unique at, right? And there were things I was excellent at, but they didn't bring energy to me. I could do them, but they weren't going to help me get 1 million people economically independent. And so I really had to find great people. And what we did in 2010, we grew so big and grew so much that we did this survey, and 12% of people that were working with us would rather not work with us. And that was pretty devastating to me because I was used to like 1 to 2%. 2% was high for us. And so these were people who either wanted a refund or wanted to stop working with us. And the problem was we grew so much that we started to hire more people. And by hiring more people, they weren't the same caliber. They weren't trained as well. And all of a sudden we had salespeople that didn't fit our culture. Our coaches didn't have the depth that they needed because it's a pretty dynamic structure to understand all the moving pieces of finance. And that's when we said, no more. We got rid of 19 people on April 1st, 2011. 19 people. We said, your services are no longer, you're not part of this culture doesn't fit. And we said, 125 people is how many people we work with per year. That's it. And then from that time until recently, I spent figuring out how can we get results in a more leveraged fashion without reducing, the value that we create. And that's when I created this program called Wealth Architecture Premium, where we do the 2 webinars per month, but then they get 10-minute coaching sessions with the financial architect rather than hour-long, and they can schedule every week. And then they get to meet with the associates trained by our accredited network, so the people that are attorney trained, so not the senior members, but kind of their underlings, which still meant that they got the one-on-one attention. And you know what? Like, we are so much happier without the chaos, without the frustration, even though it meant we had to identify who we were and what we were going to offer. And I think that some people just want more. But you know what? You just say, well, what is it that I can do that adds more value without just adding more work without adding more complexity? And is it part of our mission and our DNA and who we are? And I know those things are some of the harder things to think about, because it's easier just to show up and adjust. It's easier just to show up and work. It's easier just to put your nose to the grindstone. But you got to take time to focus on your vision. You got to take time and have some space to really think about what you're up to and ask that question: what am I doing that I shouldn't be doing, and what am I not doing that I should be doing? And then ask, how do you create more value for the people you're seeing, and how do you reach more people? Those questions lead to profound answers if you're willing to spend the time with them.
Well, sounds like you've worked with a lot of different businesses. Have you worked with chiropractors before?
So chiropractors, we've worked with thousands, actually. We're probably we are the number one financial provider in the world of chiropractic. It was our number one market segment for a large number of years, and it's still our top 3 market segment. And we were accidental tourists. We didn't go, let's target chiropractors. We just got so much value as patients. And then all of a sudden I did an interview and we started getting phone calls to our front desk. And then a lot of my best friends are chiropractors. So that's where I tend to spend my time. And I really want to help that profession, because if chiropractors don't get help and can't get their money right, well, then it's hard for them to be successful. If they're not successful, then people go to a lot more painstaking methods to handle their health issues. So I find it pretty rewarding when I help out there, and I feel very directly connected to it based upon our personal experience.
Well, you named some things that you would advise people to do, maybe from a tax perspective and things like that. What do you say to the doctor who says, well, I have a CPA? Isn't that what that guy does?
Cool. I mean, I just tell them when the next patient comes in and they say, I have a doctor. Why do I need a chiropractor? CPAs are the most reactive beings in the world. They are pretty much put their head down and they file taxes. What we found, and this should be why you would want to consider looking at something, 93% of chiropractors overpay on their taxes. 93%. The average overpayment is $11,430 per $500,000 of revenue. That's bottom line, cash in your pocket, money that you're tipping the government. We're talking about straightforward, black and white, completely ethical and legal strategies. And this is just an issue for chiropractors. I mean, it happens all the time. So the other thing is, even if you have a CPA, every 3 years you can go back, and if you've missed any deductions, you can go back and amend your returns. We once had a chiropractor who got $457,000 back from the government from overpaying. Now, this is a high-producing chiropractor, someone that a lot of people probably know his name if I shared it. We had another chiropractor get $249,000 back from amending their returns. Admittedly, we had Dr. Jerry who got $951 back from amending his returns, so that wasn't that big of a deal, and it probably would have cost him $951 to do the amendment, but we decided to charge half just so that he could get a return on it. And he said, hey, even if I just rather me have the money than the government. So, I mean, you want to get a second opinion, no matter if you have a CPA. Another reason, if you could say, oh, I have a CPA, why do I need to look at this? Well, when you start to become more successful, a CPA is going to give you the smaller amount of deductions. A tax attorney, I just got off the phone with the client. He's in the health space. He was looking to buy some artwork, and I said, well, let's get this tax attorney involved, because if you buy your artwork right, then years later you can donate it. When you donate it, you get to donate it for the appraised value. I bought a lot of artwork because of a person my tax attorney connected me to. It's been in my building. It's been in my house. But every year I donate it. I've donated it to Life West. I've donated it to one other chiropractic college. So I've donated to 2 different chiropractic colleges this artwork that they could turn around and sell at a later date. And I got back $2 from the government for every dollar I spent on it, because I got to write off the full appraised value. That's a tax attorney strategy. And most people, when they get to a certain point, never integrate the tax attorney in, like especially when you get over $1 million of revenue. You don't integrate that tax attorney in, or maybe even an engineer. We had this guy, Dr. Michael Gandolfi, who, when I met with him, he told me he had the best accountant in the world. There's no reason for us to do anything or even talk about it. Well, I appealed to his greater senses because he's a Bears fan. And I'm a Bears fan. So I said, hey, look, if I'm wrong and you meet with the accountant, we don't find any money, I'll take you to a Bears game. If I'm right and you're wrong, you're going to get money back, so you can use some of that money to take me to a Bears game. And here was the deal. $102,000 in amendments And normally I can't share this information, but he shared it publicly over and over in signed releases. We were very strict on confidentiality. But Mike got $102,000 back because we did something called cost segregation, first of all. He owned a building as a chiropractor, but had never had an engineer come out and look at the building and differentiate the different things that depreciate. So normally you have to wait 39 years to get your tax deductions. We started getting some of those deductions over a 3-year period of time or a 7-year period of time. So that saved him money. The second thing is he wasn't incorporated, which most CPAs, they're not attorneys most of the time, so they're not going to tell you to go incorporate necessarily. And if they do, they're kind of out of their jurisdiction, so to speak. So we got him an attorney. We set up an S corporation, and we started to differentiate his income because he had 2 associates. And every dollar he was taking, he was paying the highest tax rate possible because he was taking also sole proprietor income, which is like taking salary, which means you have to pay self-employment tax of 15.3%. Once you get above $116,000, you have to pay the Medicare Medicaid, which is another 3.2%. Once you get above $250,000, which he was at $350,000, he had to pay another 3.7% on top of the 3.2 for the new kind of, I don't know what you call it, a success tax or Obama tax. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden we started taking dividends and distributions for part of his income. That saved about $10,000, and that's been every year moving forward because we did this back in 2009. So we did the cost segregation, paid himself differently. And then what we find all the time is that there's tons of chiropractors that have a lot of expenses that are actually deductions. If you can relate something to your business, it becomes a deduction. And a lot of people aren't taking the full amount of deductions that are available to them. Like, here's another good example. I just asked him, I said, hey, you've got one of the nicest houses in your, where you live. Do you ever have employees over? Do you have patients over? And he's like, absolutely. We host get-togethers. I'm like, did you ever charge your business for that use? And he goes, no, why would I do that? I said, because 14 days a year, you can charge your business that it could write a check. You don't have to claim that as personal income, but that's a tax deduction for the business. I'm like, there's an example of taking an expense and turning it into a tax deduction. I said, do you ever put your kids up on the walls and pictures at the office? He says, yeah. I said, did you pay them a modeling fee? He's like, no. I'm like, well, you can pay your kids up to $6,300 per year tax-free. It's a tax deduction for the business. So look, I'm just giving a couple examples here, but I could go on this for hours and hours of just tax deductions and ideas of why if someone says they have a CPA, that's like someone saying, I have an MD. Why would I need a chiropractor? Or someone saying, I don't feel sick, so I think everything's fine, but they continue, it's like there's so many analogies that I could give with that. But this is one of the biggest erroneous areas, and there's a huge opportunity for chiropractors to get a lot of their money and reclaim it and put it back into their pocket.
Garrett, you are blowing me up with value bombs. This is such great information. I want to ask you this. So many of us chiropractors are carrying a significant amount of student loan debt. What strategies can you share in terms of how to manage and structure that debt?
Well, I'll share a basic strategy, but I'll also admit that there's a guy on my team. His name's Tim Carden. He's a financial architect. And so he's the one that runs the group, the Wealth Architecture Premium Program. I used to say things, I'll admit, I didn't say the right thing. I'd say, there's not a lot you could do. There's a tremendous amount of strategy to student loans and how you pay them and how you're charged and what you can do to restructure those. So unfortunately, I don't have all the answer to that, but I want to let you know that we do have someone that does. I mean, we've had people that have gone and worked for a nonprofit, and then if you work for a nonprofit for a certain number of years, they forgive your student loan debt. There's a program that's set up for that. I mean, that's just one small example, but I'll give kind of a gift at the end of this that allows people to get more information on the student loan piece from Tim. But here's what I would do. I wouldn't isolate it just to student loans. I'd take an inventory of every loan you have. Do you have a car loan, a business loan, a credit card, a home mortgage, anything? And I'd write them down individually as a loan balance. Okay, so what's your loan balance on each one of those? Then take the minimum required payment on each one of those individually and divide it. So take your loan balance. If it's $1,000 and you have a $10 payment, then divide it by 10, right? Just whatever your minimum monthly, not what you're currently paying, but what your minimum required payment is. Do that for each individual loan, and it's going to spit out a number. We call that number your cash flow index. A cash flow index is a great indicator of how to strategize and handle your loans. Some people use a shotgun method where a bill comes due, they pay extra on it. But if you want to eliminate loans, the most effective way to do it is you pay the minimum to every single loan, and the only loan you pay extra to is the one with the lowest cash flow index. A low cash flow index is something less than 50. And what it means is you have a cash hog on your hands. It's requiring a relatively high payment in relationship to a relatively low balance, meaning the banks are making off pretty good. They've got a good cash flow stream coming in with the small amount of money they've lent to you. So if you just focus on that one loan, it will pay off. It'll pay off fast, but it'll also pay off from a freeing up cash flow standpoint, right? Now that cash flow is freed up, you can apply that to the one with the next lowest cash flow index. We've done pretty deep analysis. Wade, who I read his Stewardship Shaper earlier in this podcast, he did a full-on analysis of how much time that typically saves someone, and it's anywhere from 25 to 53% shorter period of time to pay off loans by using the cash flow index method. So you add your student loans into that, but I'll tell you where you can really game this in your favor is if you know how to restructure loans appropriately. If you look at any underperforming assets or investments and pay off any any low cash flow index loans to free up cash flow even faster. But I'm telling you, I've seen people that have a paid off vehicle and then they have a credit card. Well, why not refinance your vehicle because there's collateral there and the interest rates are really low a lot of times, 1.9, 2.9%. And if you go pay off a 10% interest rate credit card, you've just basically quadrupled your savings just by being more efficient and being more strategic. And a lot of people skip over these steps, but these are the steps where you plug the holes in the bucket so that you're not just on the treadmill. This is the step that helps you keep more of what you make. And here's the thing. You start applying cash flow index, that's going to improve your credit score. You improve your credit score, you can now go renegotiate every other interest rate you have because you're going to look like a better borrower to the bank. Now, I know that's a decent amount of information in there where I kind of gave you the overview, but I gave you something really granular with the cash flow index. These other areas, I know I talked about taxes being $11,430 per $500,000 in revenue. Mm-hmm. For businesses doing $500,000 of revenue or less, the amount we save by doing something called cash flow optimization, which this is one piece of that, is $2,484 per month. Wow. Per month. So think about that. Rather than going and scrimping and saving and investing and putting your money at risk, what if you could just get money back in your life simply by being more effective and efficient and adding financial savvy? See, this to me is a lot more fun in the world of finance rather than me telling you budget, set money aside, wait for 30 years. It's like, hey, what if we just found a bunch of money and you took some of that and you actually enjoyed life a little bit more today, and it created an automatic way to save money that wasn't on you. It was simply being more efficient. I mean, that's what I get thrilled about. That's what I'm a nerd for. That's what I've dedicated my life to.
Well, I think what I love about what you're saying is that it's compounding. It looks like these things just snowball, and so many of us chiropractors are leaving money on the table. Let's just make better use of that money and stop leaving so much out there for Uncle Sam and anyone else. In addition to student loan, chiropractors also are not sure about how they're going to retire. What advice do you have for chiropractors on really setting themselves up for a comfortable retirement? Ooh, I hate when that happens. Sadly, we are out of time for today, so make sure you check out tomorrow's podcast for the rest of the value bombs dropped by Mr. Garrett Gunderson.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.